Good morning, welcome to a morning review. This is Kim speaking on Monday, the 21st of November. So, looking at the euro dollar first, and well, after 10 days of selling off, maybe we'll have a positive day, and it certainly started that way. Weekly pivot's not far ahead of us, so bearing in mind the amount of selling off last week, it's not much of a target to be going for, but I certainly would be looking if it can continue pushing up this way. After 8 o'clock, we'd be looking for that weekly pivot, maybe a bit more. Short term here, we've already put some higher lows in through the Asian session. There's a couple of higher lows going in. My preference really is a retrace after 8 o'clock and maybe try and buy in on that as long as there's scope for it. But from looking from the daily pivot, certainly is. We're already up at the R2 though, but it's there. Quite modestly, I say modestly pinched. They're relatively pinched, a daily pivot, so would expect the potential for the weekly pivot at some point, but as I said, I need a retrace to do so. Now, if at any time it did start selling off, I would be looking, of course, across the lows here on the short side, back down, perhaps to Friday's lows, maybe even lower towards back down towards the S1, although we don't hit both the R1 S1 that regularly with this tighter pivots. We could well see that happen. So looking at the pound dollar, and it took quite a sell-off on Friday. We're seeing somewhat of a bit of a recovery this morning. It's not had such a harsh time as the euro has in 10 days selling off. It only had 5, half the amount. But again, it's got the weekly pivot above us, and it's looking at the moment, even at 5 days, that it may push up there at some point. Nice target. It's already hit the 50s, all these key moving average, but it's through its 21s, which has helped the session a little bit. It's edging towards a near-term higher low in its move. Same sort of price action and same sort of thoughts here. Look at after 8 o'clock, see how we pan out. If I can get into a retracement, I'll be looking for the long towards the weekly pivot. Any failures of these lows here, well then I'm on for a target of Friday's low stroke the S1 area. Dollar yen, wow, from a monthly point of view, it's not done quite the same here. It's not showing any sort of strength against the US dollar of significance at the moment. It has started on the 4 hourlies. It's putting okay, it doesn't count. It's a live bar, but you see it did pip up a higher first, and it's just coming back down. If it can start heading and get below that 4 hourly 8, I'd be much more interested on the short side. I need to really see it coming below that 4 hourly 8, heading towards the 21, and then weekly pivot over perhaps the next day or so. It is struggling somewhat at the moment. Aussie dollar, well, the Aussie dollar got a bit of a boost. It's Goldman Sachs upgraded slightly to sort of a target at the end of the year of 75 to 78, which, well, it's a way away. But it's, well, just sitting there on its 4 hourly 8 again. It's struggled over the last week or two, and well, it could get a bit of a bounce here. If you can break that 4 hourly 8, I'd much prefer it for the upside. Be looking about the daily pivots just above us, and then the weekly pivot again as a target. So these weekly pivots certainly looking like reasonable targets. Bearing in much how much we sold off, we closed towards the lows. The weekly pivots aren't big targets, but very possible. But again, I need to wait until post 8 o'clock to be looking for these. And again, if it does turn tail and doesn't quite make it, be looking at the trend line here. Draw it on properly would be good, and maybe looking at the south side, the downside here towards its S1. Canadian dollar should have seen a boost because oil's seen a bit of a boost, and it did actually hold on whilst everything else, well, I say it held on. It was the choppiest old market going on Friday at times with this price action here and through. But it has, there was some reasonable news coming from OPEC, which suggests Iraq, Iraq might join the party to hold on to quotas, etc. So we've seen a continuation already through the Asian session there. In fact, I'll just show you oil's just gapped up here by the looks of things, goodness, on that news. But that gap has potentially got a feel, so got to watch for that. If oil starts tipping over, that might push the Canadian dollar back up again. But for now, potentially lower high coming in here on the dailies. So that's what I'm really looking at there. It's a bit of a clearer movement this morning as through these markets. I was looking, there doesn't seem to be much of a gap on the 4 hourlies. If it has, it's mainly been closed. In terms of price action, so it could well start tracking back south again. Already through the weekly pivot, it has got an untouched daily pivot though, and my concern with a gap in the oil is that we might see that some sort of reversal before we see a continuation to the downside here. But certainly, as I said on Friday, there put the lower, well, not confirmed lower high in, but certainly it looks a bit weak at the moment. But we'll see how we run through today. Already down to its S2, so it's extended quite a bit of its range for today, although again the pivots are relatively pinched. But there's the possibility of a continuation to the downside. Again, I'd rather be watching oil continue to push up, but with that gap there, I'm just aware of that in the back of my mind. It might be nicer if it was filled first. Well, it certainly would be. Okay, in terms of news today, there's nothing in the way of news today apart from Draghi speaking at 4 o'clock, and he's due to testify about the European Central Bank's annual about the European Central Bank's annual report before the European Parliament in Strasbourg. Brilliant beer in Strasbourg, I might say. But aside of that, that might be the only movement, and that might be the only thing that's brilliant in Strasbourg. So there we are. That is today. Hope you have a great one. Bye for now.